Today, there are a lot of interesting updates from the Pokrovsk direction. Ukrainian drone operators systematically eliminate small Russian assault groups, attempting to create a staging ground for Pokrovsk's encirclement. Here, the new Russian assault vector sees Russian generals desperate to keep up their momentum, throwing undertrained soldiers into relentless day and night human wave assaults. With losses so severe, Russians have even sent wounded soldiers on crutches back into battle, resulting in bodies of fallen soldiers slowly piling up in the fields. The goal of the Russian forces in this area is to take the town of Avdiivka and the open fields around it, creating a staging ground for the encirclement of Pokrovsk from the western flank of the city. Russian forces are forced to go around, as they lack the reserves necessary to launch frontal assaults on Pokrovsk. The Institute for the Study of War recently stated that Russians are sending newly recruited soldiers straight to the front line with barely a few weeks of basic training, underscoring the Russian manpower issue. Furthermore, Russians lack the sufficient air support needed to dismantle and eliminate Ukrainian forces holding up in fortified high-rise buildings and industrial zones. To take Avdiivka, Russian forces rely heavily on pure infantry assaults to storm the Ukrainian positions across the field to reach the town. These infantry assaults are usually made up of groups of up to 3 soldiers, 15 to 20 meters apart, to reduce the risk posed by Ukrainian FPV kamikaze drone strikes. Reports from Ukrainian soldiers on the ground indicate that Russians launch these assaults around the clock, putting intense pressure on Ukrainian defenders, while at a high cost in human life. Russians use the terracotta north of Avdiivka to observe Ukrainian positions in Avdiivka and the surrounding area. Russian forces accumulated in Solon and Novovasilievka then moved through the tree lines and open fields to attack Avdiivka directly, while the Solona River shields Russian assault groups from direct Ukrainian counterattacks from below. However, the Russian assault groups move at a slow pace as they are on foot, which means that the Ukrainian drone operators can quickly detect the Russian assault groups while they are still on the approach. This has led to Ukrainians relying heavily on drone units to monitor and eliminate the Russian infantry, eliminating the Russian infantry assaults with deadly efficiency. As the Russian assault groups are also very small, they generally do not have the required weight to breach Ukrainian defenses. Instead, they form a constant stream of attackers that are meant to overwhelm Ukrainians in the long run. However, this has turned out to be a very costly strategy for the Russians, precisely because the small infantry groups don't have the hitting power of a larger assault. This makes them easier to deal with individually, as Ukrainians inflict up to 400 Russian casualties a day in the Pokrovsk direction alone. Combat footage of a Ukrainian drone operator in the area reveals the reality of Russian assaults, where dozens, if not hundreds, of dead Russian soldiers are scattered across the fields south of Avdiivka. To make it worse, Russians often can't or don't retrieve their wounded, leaving them to die in the fields instead. However, Russian commanders were in dire need of reserves to keep up the momentum of the assaults. In desperation, they even ordered their wounded soldiers back into the fight. From a footage shows how 2 wounded Russian soldiers were walking through the fields on crutches toward Ukrainian positions, without communicating any intent to surrender. While these Russian soldiers could barely walk, they were still assaulting Ukrainian positions, leaving Ukrainian drone operators little choice but to eliminate them regardless. Overall, the Russian offensive effort on the western flank of Pokrovsk is rapidly becoming unsustainable for the Russians due to the high attrition rates of their tactic. Russian voluntary recruitment is at an all-time low, with Russians having to promise outlandish signing bonuses to sign new recruits, with Russian soldiers reporting they use their signing bonus to pay off their commanders so they do not have to go on assault. This all underlines the Russian issue of high casualty rates that often far exceed the pre-war populations of the towns that are being fought over, with Russians consistently losing men in the thousands just to take one village. Currently, Russia's manpower losses in Ukraine have surpassed another grim milestone. As the tension between the warring countries has escalated in recent months, according to figures sourced from Ukraine's armed forces, Moscow has lost nearly 2,000 soldiers per day and more than 800,000 men since the war began. Russia's losses of military personnel passing grim milestones in terms of daily counts and overall casualties are significant because Moscow is currently facing a manpower shortage, which could further undermine its capacity to continue this war. Moreover, the growing lack of troops combined with Russia's high equipment losses could weaken Russia's defensive capabilities and pave way for further counterattacks by Ukraine. In their accounts of Russian daily casualties, Ukraine's armed forces reported that Russia lost 1,970 soldiers today, reaching new heights as the number of soldiers lost on Moscow's side per day previously ranged from 1,000 to 1,500. Pace of Russia's monthly losses began rising from September 2023 onward, reaching the peak in December 2024. Moscow has not only seen increased losses in its own troops, but has also begun losing high numbers of North Korean soldiers fighting alongside the Russians on the front lines in Kursk. While in their post about daily and overall losses for Russia since the war began today, the Ministry of Defense of Ukraine wrote, "There is little that can withstand a man who can conquer himself." Referencing Kyiv's latest Russian loss figures, the British Defense Intelligence, in its daily update on X on January 17th, said Russian forces sustained 429,660 casualties, killed and wounded, in the Russia-Ukraine conflict in 2024. A notable increase on the 252,940 casualties sustained in 2023, according to Ukrainian General Staff reporting. Since the start of the conflict, Russia has likely sustained over 790,000 casualties. Russian forces sustained 429,660 casualties, killed and wounded, in the Russia-Ukraine conflict in 2024. A notable increase on the 252,940 casualties sustained in 2023. According to Ukrainian General Staff reporting, since the start of the conflict, Russia has likely sustained over 790,000 casualties.